So whatever we talk about, there's more and background and more information, etc. So if you want to contact me, it's great. Just put MASA in the subject line, because I get so many emails that I don't need anything recited, enlarged, or refinanced. So, so thank you. Next slide, please. So some of you have probably run into this. So go ahead and run the video. That feel like sometimes you're just hitting your head against a tree, and of course the lion's sitting there going, dinner. Oh, next slide. I will also tell you that I do a lot of use of videos and stories. If I can support you in some way, be more than happy to do that. I've written a couple of books on that, and I'm also writing one right now on how to use videos to get the topic in a minute or so. This is a tee up. So one of the reasons I read a lot, and by the way, I never read till I was 38. I was a physics math guy. And until I ran into this guy named Art Costa, and he kind of started quoting research. I'm going, how do I know that's what it says? I've had so much smoke blown up my pant leg. So I started reading to check his veracity. But one of the things I do read off the business side is that there are some really cool mental models. I did not say business has the answer, but they do have some cool mental models that we can use. And so most of the things I write is a blend of education and business, because I will steal any idea from anywhere if I think it'll advance our learning and our organizational development and leadership. So I read stuff out 5 years, see what's hot out there, and usually if business is doing it 3 to 5 years later, somebody says, "Oh, gee, education ought to do that." Well, let's know it ahead of time and be able to build an on-ramp. Next slide, please. So this comes out of the book Fearless Organizations by Amy Edmondson. I fell in love with this work. She's at UPenn. And actually, I have just started reading a new book called Right Kind of Wrong. And I just started that. But if we want to increase, you really have to create density in the talent that you have. As I do turnarounds for schools, etc., it's one thing to work or think outside the box. You always have to work inside the box, because you can't just take out all your staff members or all your kids or whatever. You got to work with what you got and see how you can extend their thinking, extend the way we can attract more kids to keep in school. Because quite frankly, once they disengage or quit, we have no influence. So we want the kids in school so that we have the possibility. Now we have to model and we have to do lots of things to make that a safe place to be. But if it's not safe for the staff, it's not going to be safe for the kids. So I look at that very seriously. Richard Sheridan, and go ahead. The next talk we're going to do is on Chief Joy Officer by Richard Sheridan, but this is one of his statements in there. When the fear doesn't make bad news go away, it goes into hiding if you don't have the organization where we deal with the issues. And if you can't deal with it, you're never going to solve it. So years ago, because half my life was in the inner city, if you can't talk about race, culture, all kinds of things, you never can get beyond it. So hopefully we can build organizations where we can talk about the issue. Here's a quick example. See how you react viscerally to these two statements. Why aren't your African-American kids performing at the same level as white kids? Usually what happens is we feel blamed, etc. Why aren't your kids? It's a you. Let me ask that a different way. Why aren't the African American kids performing at the same level? Now that's a question that opens it up to what are some possibilities? How might we address that to see if there's, pilot programs, whatever. Let's see if we can figure out how to do that. So framing the question also says a lot about, is it okay to surface really tough issues? Because if you can't surface them, you can't solve them. Okay, next. So one of the things that as a leader and as an assistant soup or as a principal, I got to figure out who can tell me the truth. And so especially when I go in, I spent 20 years in Wayzata and several years in many districts, but now that I've kind of come in as a 2 or 3 year turnaround, I got to find out very quickly who's going to tell me the truth. I didn't say I like necessarily hearing what they might say, but I got to have people who will tell me the truth. Otherwise, I can't deal with it. And so I want a group of people who, whether I like them or not, will they tell me the truth, because then I'm getting the right information and then we can deal with the issues. So it scares the bejesus out of me when I first start a turnaround project is who are those people? Who's going to come in? And here's how I hold it. If this teacher or this custodian or this the secretary or whatever comes in and says, we got a problem, you trust that person and you know you got a problem. It's not they're just in grousing or complaining. It's you have enough trust in that person. You say, holy buckets, what can we do? So those are the people that I want close to me and feel free to walk in. Next slide, please. So here's a kind of a quick snapshot of what this book has about how do you create fearless organizations so people will talk. And we'll give you a survey a little bit later that I've used as a pre-post to try to assess that. But number one, safety. If you don't have a physically safe building, you're probably not going to make it psychologically safe either. And psychologically safe means how will you respond in front of the faculty when somebody says something that's really tough to hear with. And for one of my schools, by the end of the year, I was talking to this English teacher, and I said, so when I came here, you didn't know me from Adam. So why do you trust me? She said, because I told you you were wrong and you didn't take my head off. So how do you create a psychologically safe? The last school I was at last year, as a matter of fact, when I met the leadership team, I asked them two questions. I said, number one, look around the room. This is our leadership team. Are these the people you want to get in trouble with? Trust me, we're going to get in trouble. So are these the people that you feel comfortable with? But I said, here's my second question, and even more important to me. Will you tell me if you think I'm wrong? And out of the back of the room, said, well, you're the principal, so, we're not going to. I said, it's not the question I asked you. Don't let me walk off a cliff. Will you tell me if you think I'm wrong? Now, I may still do it because I'm stupid, but at least tell me if you think I'm going down the wrong path. That psychological safety will pay off dividends down the road. Now, do I believe everybody who says everything? Absolutely not. Again, going back to these are the people that I will trust, and you have to figure that out, especially if you're new and you're just taking over a district. It's very hard to find out very quickly who will tell you the truth. Hopefully that's your administrative assistant, because you're going to live or die with them. From my experience. Setting the stage. What are the expectations? I expect you to tell me the truth. I expect you to put issues on the table, whether it's a leadership team or professional development, whatever it is. The expectation is we're going to deal with real stuff that make a difference in this school and this district. And at the same time, why is this important? So a lot of people that whether they be superintendents or district or principals, is if you want to change something, why is that important to you? And so, because I was interested in why, I went and got certified as a why trainer. And I have found that when I do why, tell me what your why is so that I know that I can align maybe some activities or give you some research that'll help you. If you're a contributor, if that's your why, you want to contribute, then how do we make that happen? If building trust is your why, let's figure out how we build trust. So setting the stage is listening enough and having a conversation to find out why something is really important to them. Inviting participation is another kind of a big area. Show humility. If the leader doesn't show humility, trust me, they're not gonna admit that they're not doing as well as they want to. A story about I'll use a business example. The book is called American Icon, and it was written about Alan Mulally, who went into Ford, 17 billion in the hole, and in 3 years turned it around. And what he did was, with his executive vice presidents, the first time he met was, I want to know, are things going well, green? Are things, we don't know where it's going, that's a yellow caution, or red, this really sucks. And the first meeting, when they all came in, everything was green. And he said, how can everything be green and we're 17 billion in the hole? Are you crazy? So the next meeting, somebody had guts enough to say, we got a real problem in our unit. Alan Mulally stood up and thank you, because he was humble enough to listen to get the information. So that's not, I didn't say it was easy, but you do have to show humility, or people probably, matter of fact, I will tell you, when I coach people, I want 3 things. I want to know they have the courage to confront real hard issues, humility to say, I don't know something, or I'm not as good as I want to be, and the discipline to follow through. If you have those 3 things, I'll almost guarantee a 95% success. If they don't have that, worked with a team where one of my APs was very smart, had discipline, had courage, no humility. It just isn't going to work, because people read that and say, well, if I go in there, I get my head handed to me. So Tom Peters years ago said, the chance of getting good feedback is inversely proportional to the chance of getting shot. So if you have meetings where you take their head off or shoot them, and I'm not talking about safety and things like that, but if we can't have enough humility to say, I don't know, or not, I need to know more information, you're probably not going to get a whole lot. Ask questions. Sometimes I work with leaders who say that if they just do it, I get that. Ask them a question rather than saying, do this. And trust me, there are some people where you have to say, do this. I've only taken 4 teachers out before the end of the year in 40 years. But sometimes it can't go on. I get that. But as you start working with people, ask questions to surface the issue rather than just making statements. And listen actively, because nobody's ever lost a job by listening. So listen, and usually they'll tell you exactly what you need to know, but you got to listen and ask questions and see if you can surface that. Responding, as I said, if you just take their head off. So once I get information, thank you. You don't have to justify or anything else. Thank you for having the courage to tell me the truth. Tell me what you think, because especially if you come in and you haven't been in the district, you are dependent on, you're looking at the district through their lens. And so then offer support. If this is a really good idea, what can I do to help you? That could be a book summary. It could be a network from an expert that you know. So, as I say, when you hire me, you hire my network. That's a John Saphir. Now Edgar Schein died, Peter Block. There are people that I've been fortunate enough to learn from. And so when you have your network, that really helps. So that's kind of a 4 categories with some specifics about how to help create a fearless organization where the information flows up and down. Because obviously people need to know information, and you also need to take their feedback from it. Next slide, please. So I have used this as a pre-post test, and the 3 R's in red are the negative. If you make a mistake on this team, it's held against you. Well, if that's true, you're probably not going to get a whole lot of feedback, because if I say the wrong thing and I get hammered for it, probably not going to say a whole lot. As I said, Tom Peters, you know, you don't want to get your head taken off. Members of this team, I can bring up anything and put it as a team so we can talk about it. That's a real plus. I will also tell you that I sometimes broke out taking the three R's, put them at the top, and then put the 4 at the bottom, so that because I know I'm going to get the negative responses and the positive, so I can run this. People on this team sometimes reject others for being different. When I come in as an outside consultant, especially when I'm working with a leader, I want to go to their leadership team. And can they see me? I don't know if you can see me, but what I look for is this. When Bill says something, oh God, there goes Bill again. I just look for the nonverbals. That'll tell me, is there trust in this system or not? And if it's trusting, we have more, and you're trustworthy, we will generate trust. But you can tell a lot by just the nonverbals. Is it difficult to ask team members for help? I'm going to give you a couple of things out of Pixar and some other businesses that they use to try to make sure that it's okay to ask members to help for help. No one on this team would deliberately undermine you. You know, gossip is terrible and all the behind the store. So Ray Dalio of Bridgewater said he will not have any conversation about anybody who's not in the room. Now that's really hard. And now I know when I've had spouses come in and their spouse who works for me is an alcoholic or abusing, you know, you get all kinds of things that come in as the leader of a building or a district. So there is confidentiality. I get that. But I also want to know if we're working as a team, I don't want somebody undermining somebody else. If you got a better idea, say so. But don't set up somebody else to look like the bad guy, bad girl. It's just unproductive. Now, if we don't get the results we want, I get that. So let's see how we can change the results. Remember, Edward Deming said, you are getting exactly 100% congruency with the results you're designed to do. So if you're not getting the results you want, change the system, change the organization, change the safety, etc., to see if you get different results. And working with a member of the team, there are mavericks, there are outliers, there are rogues. Sometimes you got to be careful how rogue can someone be, but don't necessarily write those off. Sometimes they're looking at something that you're not seeing. And here's a quote that I use often from Neil Postman. Children are messages we send to the future that we will not see. So sometimes a staff member is seeing something, they read something, or they're looking at different things. So don't necessarily write them off. So one of the questions I might ask is, tell me how you got to that conclusion. Tell me why that's important to you. They may have it worked out in their mind. I might think they're crazy, but if I ask a question, they may have a perfect answer. Same thing happens with teachers in the classroom with the kids. Sometimes they come up with really crazy answers, but maybe their logic makes sense. Might be wrong, but at least have them explain that. So I've used this as a pre-test, post-test. Now here's a caution I want to tell you. When you do, I always do a mini survey, so maybe 2 months down the road, I might do this again. And the results end up being worse. And the reason is sometimes more people are being more honest. So don't be surprised if on the short run in a formative assessment, you might see the information dip. So in Amy Erickson's newest book, The Right Kind of Wrong, airplane crashes are really very limited now. It just doesn't happen that often because there's a checklist, and what they've done is they build that team of pilots so that the assistant pilot or the not the captain but the next in command feels free to say, this is not going well, pay attention, we're in trouble. Because it used to be, well, you're the captain, yeah, well, sure, go down with the ship and we all die. So what they try to do is create that team. So, and Amy starts out with the story, they tried to say, well, will that work in a medical team, in an operating room? And so she thought, well, as they build teams, the error rates would go down. All the research that they did was the error rates went up when they had psychological safety. And she's going, oh my God, my dissertation is going down the tubes. As they started digging into it, what they found was that the team would talk about something that wasn't quite right early rather than wait till it was too late. And they were okay sharing things on a small basis rather than a large basis until there was something really bad. So keep in mind that as a team really comes together, sometimes the error rates will increase, but it's really giving you a precursor to say what's going on. So, okay, next slide, please. So as we talked, would you please go into breakout for about 5 minutes, 3 people, and each take a couple of minutes. What is making sense to you? What questions might you have? How is that relating to the organization you work with? Or the last thing is, what was Lori smoking when she hired Bill to do this? So take about 5 minutes, and I would suggest that if you have a question, maybe put it in the chat, and Lori or Dave can pick it up later when we take a little breather at the end. So open up questions. Let me give you kind of an overall premise that as I say, I never read till I was 38. Now I've read 1,400 books, but knowledge is important and insufficient. You can have all the knowledge you want, but if you can't do it, it doesn't make any difference. So again, that's why I ask questions. So how do you see that working? How will that work with this staff? How will that work with the central office administrators? How do we do teamwork? How do we build leadership skills? How do we build for a future? So again, there's lots of research and lots of knowledge out there. Not questioning that at all. And not but, and you still got to be able to do it. So I've learned from Marshall Goldsmith, who's the #1 business coach 10 years in a row. I got trained about 5 years ago. And I pretty much do that all the time because it's focused on what are we trying to accomplish and what are the metrics that'll tell us that we're making progress. I sometimes say, okay, if I'm in Minneapolis and I want to go to Duluth, and I see a sign says Owatonna, 25 miles. I'm not going to Duluth. So what are the road signs that say we're getting closer or farther away from our goal? Okay, next slide, Dave. So what makes a difference in building psychological safety? One is, and I've kind of touched on some of this, but reduce the silence. Get people that will talk and put stuff on the table. Who are your Cassandras? The Cassandras are the ones that are seeing the future that probably not paying attention to. And it's not that they're always right, but at least what are they looking at? What are the indicators? What are you hearing or what are you seeing that tells you something is not working or that it is working? Keep in mind, it's as important to anchor what is working. Now, I also have kind of coined the term the reverse Las Vegas effect. Most people know Las Vegas is what goes on here, stays here. In terms of learning, leadership, organizational development, if it's working, tell everybody. If it's not working, tell everybody. I don't want to keep doing the same thing if it's not working. So I can't live long enough to make all the mistakes in the world. So reverse or Las Vegas, tell everybody what's happening. Focus on learning. We can get into all kinds of organizational issues, etc. But ultimately, let's keep learning as the focus. And Art Costa years ago, we were sitting at the Sofitel, and we had just finished the training of cognitive coaching because I was in that think tank. And he said, "Well, you're a principal." I said, "Yeah." He says, "What are you doing to create a mentally stimulating environment for your staff?" And I said, "What? I have to do that too?" And this is typical Art. He said, "Well, if you're not doing it for the staff, why do you think you'll do it for kids?" Ouch. I've never forgotten that. And so at the district level, when I worked in the district, what are we doing for our district leadership team or the ELT or whatever you call it? Because how are we having conversations about learning with principals? So many times we end up with the killer bees, budgets, boundaries, and other B words, buildings, etc. What are we talking about learning? And I was coaching a secondary assistant superintendent in an urban district in the east. And she said, "I want you to come out and look at our 6 high schools and tell the principals what they need to do to increase test scores." I said, "I can do that from my office in Austin and it won't cost you a dime." He said, "No, you got to come, you got to spend a half a day in each school." I said, "Trust me, I can tell you right now." She said, "Nope." So I got on a plane, spent 3 days in this town, came back. She couldn't meet with me at the time. And 2 days later, she called me and said, "What'd you find out?" I said, "The same thing I would have told you before." I said, "You have meetings of your secondary principals, right?" "Yep." I said, "How much time is devoted to learning and leadership and organizational skills?" "Well, it's always on the agenda." I said, "That's not what I asked you. How much time do you spend talking about these things?" She said, "Well, we never get to it." I said, "But if Mrs. Smith calls and is complaining about the parking lot in a high school, what do you do?" "Well, I call the principal and make Mrs. Smith happy." I said, "So how do we keep focused on learning?" Now I know you got to deal with parking lot. I get that. But at some point we have to keep focused on learning. What are we doing to increase learning among our own people, um, so that they carry that message forward? Interpersonal climate, it is, you got to be visible. And you as superintendents, I don't know how you do it with all the demands from the public, etc. But how do we get out there and talk to people, walk the halls, and talk to teachers? What's going on? How's it working for you? more employment and more employee engagement. How do we assess what's going on? How do we get their input? What would you do? What's one thing that we could do that would make teaching easier for you? Or one thing that we could do to economize time, because time is killing everybody. It's the most non-renewable and important resource that we have. And superintendents just get pulled in so many directions. It's amazing. So here's another thing from Bridgewater, from Ray Dalio, the one I said earlier, you can't talk about anybody that's not in the room. He has two rules. He said, I want radical open-mindedness and radical transparency. Be as transparent as you can and be open to ideas. And Bridgewater is like one of the number one financial resource. Now, Ray Dalio has retired, but he wrote a book called Principles, P-L-E-S, and it's a slog because it's got a lot of stuff in there. But if you're nice to me and come back, I could send you some of my notes from the book. Okay, Pixar. Pixar has had lots of really good pictures that have done very well. They have a brain trust where they get people from many different sources and they come together, and the option that they have in their team is called plussing. You can't tear down an idea. All you can do is suggest something that'll make it better. I found that amazing from Pixar. And Ed Catmull, who's the CEO, he might be retired by now, said every time we have a script or the first run of the potential movie, it sucks. He literally said it sucks. And so we get the brain trust together. How do we make it better? And so that's just a strategy that I thought was kind of cool from business. Not that it's totally 100% transferable, but that idea of plussing might be worth taking a look at. In the Google study, this comes out of a book called Work Rules. Laszlo Bock was the HR director of Google, and they had a project called Project Oxygen. And here's what they found. They tried employee benefits. They tried all kinds of positive reinforcement, giving medals, all kinds of stuff. And you know what? The one thing that had significant was psychological safety. It all came down to that at Google. Once there was psychological safety, all kinds of great ideas. Not every idea ended up being adopted, but what they found was that it just unleashed the power, the potential. So really what we're talking about here in education and in districts is how do we unleash the potential that exists? Now, some people, I just have to be real honest with you, in one suburban district that I spent a lot of years in, we had a fantastic teacher who ended up getting the Ashwin Award one year. And I think it was like $8,000 plus, I can't remember how many people got it, but she had a great award and she was just dynamite teacher. And I said, well, I can hardly wait to tell everybody about this. She said, don't do that. I said, I'll use the term Lois. It wasn't Lois, but I said, Lois, why wouldn't you want your colleagues to know that you won the state Ashwin Award for all the things you do? She said, I'll get killed in the teacher's lounge. Now, I think that's really sad. And now with so many people retiring and bringing new people in, how will we make it safe for new people coming in and be able to coach them and support them, especially new leaders? Because just nationwide, superintendents and principals are leaving like crazy. And I had one superintendent in New York tell me, I have gone to my last meeting where I have to defend vaccinations en masse. I'm done with this. It's really, really difficult because there's an African proverb that says when an old person dies, a library burns. So when that person leaves, they take a lot of information and a lot of relationships out the door with them. Next slide, Dave. So here's some research that came from medical. It's in the book, but again, I'm trying to save you some time. And I think you can make the application from medical directors because the superintendent's really kind of the, the focal point in the community leadership. Number one, the medical directors were approachable and accessible. They could be talked to rather than we'll make an appointment and you can get in 3 weeks from now. So one of the things as you're visible and walking into the schools, you are more approachable because people can see you and you're not being, sometimes you get finessed by somebody trying to protect you. I get that, but you still need unvarnished feedback. Acknowledge their failability. That's why he said, tell me if I'm wrong. I'm not perfect and I'll make mistakes. Hopefully none of them are earth shattering or hurt somebody, but I'm going to do the best I can with what I thought at the time. And what they found was leaders who go back and say, I made a mistake. I thought it was this. I did this. It was wrong. I'm sorry. And think of those people who try to cover, and it never works because ultimately somebody will figure it out. And proactively invited people from the staff to give them input. So I'm sure most of you do listening sessions with the community, listening sessions with the staff, etc. Very important because you want to hear, as I say, unvarnished feedback. Next slide, Dave. Okay, so it's a good place to start to build in your organization. So start talking about it, saying, boy, the research in so many areas, so many fields, psychological safety is so important. And think about teachers. If they can create psychological safety in their classrooms, the kids are going to do better. Same way with the school and obviously with the district and with the community. And hopefully we can reduce the amount of anger and political issues and start talking about learning. Next slide, please. So here is another video that I want to kind of end with. I've got a couple more things I want to show you, but go ahead and run the video. So here's a question for you. Who are the people who help turn you over and get you righted when you're on your back and ready to hurt yourself or somebody else? Next slide, please. As you can tell, the videos, and so where do you find support? So take about a minute each. Want to go to breakout and take about a minute each. Where do you find support? Then we got about 5-minute wrap up. So here's my information. If there's a question in the chat that Laura, you picked up or whatever, or Dave, let me know. But let's go. Here's what I want to do is there's 3 visuals that I think may help you if you're going to do this, some presenting to somebody else. So let's go to the next one, Dave. So this is just these are visuals that I pick up from different places. And so it just gives you what is psychological safety, what is not. So sometimes it's important to say what is not and what it is. So these are visuals I thought, again, save you time. That might help you be an organizer to have a conversation. Go to the next one. This is, again, a quick, actually quicker and dirtier. So it's a lot less cumbersome. But again, just having some of these visuals I thought would be helpful and would again save you time, because that's the issue. And so the last one. So again, just another, these come off of LinkedIn, Twitter. I get them from all kinds of different places. So when I find a visual that I can pull, sometimes it's just easier to start the conversation with a visual, just to introduce that, and as well as videos, etc. So I'm I'm also amazed that as a superintendent, some of you had the time to be able to spend an hour with me, and I really appreciate it. The next one will be on Chief Joy Officer. Richard Sheridan has become kind of a friend, and they're using some of his work in different schools, Blue Valley, several different school districts around the nation. And it's about how to create joy in the workplace. And I'll be talking about that next month, and giving you again some of these things that you can work with. So Richard, he runs Menlo Innovation. Let me give you just a taste. They do software development. They do not use email. You want to talk to someone, get up and go talk to them. You got 50 people in a room. He said, I want them to talk and share information. And he's got one of the best PLCs I've ever seen. So and once I read the book, I said, I got to see this. I don't believe it. So we'll be talking about that. And then in November, we're going to do What Got You Here Won't Get You There. Marshall Goldsmith, as I said, is the #1 business coach 10 years in a row. He's got a cadre of probably, I think it's 2,000 or 3,000 people in business. There's like 5 or 10 educators. I think it has potential to change education, that kind of stakeholder coaching where you get, for instance, who's best to tell me whether I'm a good principal or not? It's the teachers. They're receiving my leadership. So it's using authentic people and with metrics. How will we know? And one last thing before, if there's any questions, can you see this book? This just came out from John Saphir. Oh, well, it's called Disrupting Teacher Opportunity Gap. John Saphir is probably one of the best. #1, his integrity is above reproach. He is the best researcher that I've seen in 40 years knowing him. And this is a blueprint for districts, politicians, etc., on how to change schools. So disrupting the teacher opportunity gap. I literally just got it and read it on the plane over to Kauai. So I'll probably get some notes on it somewhere in the next couple of months. But if you want a Bible, he also did The Skillful Teacher and The Skillful Leader, but this thing has just tremendous information in it. So anyway, are there questions for the good of the order? We got a couple minutes.
You've overwhelmed everyone, Bill.
Do I?
You've overwhelmed everyone. Oh, I see some thumbs up. I see you piqued Holly's interest when you talked about the organization with no emails. I think she's ready to leave her current position and work at the new one.
Well, like Rich said, he said we spent.
Yeah, we really appreciate your time, Bill, particularly from Hawaii, that we were important enough to take a break from that. And we look forward to seeing you next month.
Right.
Dave will be sending out the slides from Bill's presentation to everybody, and we'll see you next time.